Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking the psychological blueprints of successful organizational transformation. We're going to figure out exactly how to turn the inevitable friction of a big transition into genuine, unstoppable momentum. Because listen, this isn't just about the logistics of rolling out new tools or changing an org chart. We're taking a deep dive into the underlying human behaviors that dictate whether a change initiative thrives or completely dies on the vine.
Let's kick things off with a pretty provocative question. Why do so many smart, incredibly well-funded organizational changes fail right out of the gate? Seriously, why does rolling out a seemingly helpful new software system or shifting a company's structure almost always seem to be met with immediate pushback, anxiety, and just deep frustration? Well, the data paints a pretty stark picture. According to research from Prosy, change saturation and fatigue are incredibly real. In fact, nearly three-quarters of organizations are pushing their people to or even past the absolute breaking point. When you have way too much change happening all at once, a phenomenon we often call change collision, people don't just complain, they completely disengage. The dam just breaks. So here is our roadmap for fixing this. We're going to cover the reality of resistance, the psychology of pushback, power with versus power over leadership, emotional intelligence, steps for engaging employees, and finally sustaining the change. Let's get into it. Starting with Section 1, the reality of resistance, and really understanding that pushback. First up, we have to confront a hard truth. Employee pushback isn't just a bad attitude or a performance issue. It is a biological given. And as Paul Gibbons' 4D model so brilliantly illustrates, it takes a lot of different forms. Resistance isn't always just someone yelling no in a meeting, right? It shows up as destruction, like actively spreading rumors about the new initiative, or distancing, where people just mysteriously start skipping meetings and checking out, delays, where deadlines for the new project suddenly start slipping with endless excuses, and dissent, which can be loud objections or, even more dangerously, a covert silent refusal to adapt. Which brings us to Section 2, the psychology of pushback, looking at what's actually going on inside the brain. Now, you might be wondering, why do those 4Ds happen at a neurological level when people face uncertainty? It's simple. Our brains literally prefer what's familiar. It's a phenomenon called the status quo bias. It's driven by the brain's default mode network, which absolutely loves automated, well-practiced routines. Think about it. It takes a massive amount of cognitive effort in your prefrontal cortex to override ingrained habits and learn a whole new way of doing things. Your team isn't just being stubborn. Their brains are literally just trying to conserve energy. And it goes deeper. We are hardwired for something called loss aversion. Based on Kahneman and Tversky's famous research, we know the brain's reward system reacts way more intensely to the anticipation of losing something than to gaining something of equal value. Because of this, employees often view new workflows or tools, say a massive new AI integration, not as a great gain in efficiency, but as a devastating loss of their hard-earned expertise. That is a really heavy emotional toll that leaders just completely overlook all the time. Now combine that with psychological reactance. This is that immediate defensive pushback that flares up the exact second people feel their freedom of choice or autonomy is being restricted. This means that when changes are forced from the top down, without any warning or consultation, employees instinctively push back just to reclaim their autonomy. They desperately want to feel like they are in the driver's seat of their own work environment. Moving on to Section 3, power with versus power over, a completely new leadership paradigm. If we actually want to dissolve that neurological resistance we just mapped out, we have to completely abandon the traditional power over approach. You know the one, that classic parent-child dynamic, where a leader just stands on a soapbox, decrees decisions, and extracts performance. Instead, we need to pivot to a power with paradigm. This is an adult-to-adult dialogue, where leaders share the problem early and piece the puzzle together alongside their teams. It is all about co-creation, which ultimately unlocks massive human potential rather than suppressing it. And hey, if you're sitting there thinking this is just soft HR fluff, take a look at Best Buy. Former CEO Hubert Joly needed to execute a massive turnaround, but instead of just firing off top-down corporate memos, he co-created their Renew Blue strategy by physically going to the stores and actually listening to frontline employees. Their lived experiences shaped the corporate change. The result? A mind-blowing 300% stock surge. That right there is the hard ROI of a co-created power with approach. Empathy literally drives serious business results. Next up is Section 4, emotional intelligence in leadership, which is the essential catalyst for all of this. To pull off that kind of power with co-creation, leaders need a highly specific toolkit.
Daniel Goleman's model of emotional intelligence highlights 5 key areas: self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. And these aren't just nice to haves. Remember that psychological reactance we talked about earlier, that knee-jerk defensiveness? Guiding a diverse team through that fear without triggering a massive conflict requires intense self-regulation and incredibly deep empathy from a leader. You absolutely have to be able to read the room and adjust your approach on the fly.
Let's look at Section 5, Steps for Engaging Employees, where we put this theory into practice. So how do we operationalize this? One of the absolute best ways to structure employee engagement is the 80 CAR model by Pro-C. It guides individuals through awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. Pay close attention to the sequential nature of this framework. Skipping steps is exactly why change initiatives fail. You literally cannot train someone on the knowledge of a new system or expect them to have the ability to use it if you haven't first cultivated their awareness of the problem and their genuine desire to participate. It has to happen in this exact order. And to build that genuine desire, the IMD outlines this brilliant co-creation sequence. Step 1, bring people in early, way before the ink is dry on your master plan. Share the problem, not just your finalized solution. Step 2, lead with a two-way conversation, making sense of the change together. And step 3, leverage your coaching skills to create a secure base. That is a psychological safety net where people feel supported enough to stumble, ask questions, and take real risks as they learn entirely new workflows.
Finally, Section 6, sustaining the change and making it actually stick.
Because we really have to look at what happens after that big kickoff meeting. Notice the massive difference in these bars? Active, visible leadership is mathematically crucial to sustaining any change. Highly effective sponsors literally jump a project's success rate from a mere 29% to a massive 73%. You simply cannot just announce a change from a stage, declare victory, and then retreat your executive office. You have to actively, visibly sponsor it all the way through the grueling middle phases. And this powerful quote from change expert John P. Cotter absolutely hits the nail on the head. Nothing undermines change more than behavior by important individuals that is inconsistent with the verbal communication. Leaders must physically embody the change they are asking their teams to commit to. I mean, think about it. If you are rolling out a state-of-the-art digital tracking tool, but the executive team still demands printed paper reports for their weekly meetings, the credibility of that entire multi-million-dollar initiative crumbles instantly. So, as you look ahead to your next big organizational shift, I want to leave you with this final thought. Are you just mandating compliance from the top down, fighting an endless, exhausting uphill battle against your team's neurobiology? Or are you applying emotional intelligence in truly co-creating the future with your team? The difference between those two approaches is absolutely everything. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.